part of the build-up D-Day in 1943, 3,000 local residents in the area around Slapton, Blackhorn and East Arlington in South Devon were evacuated from their homes in order that the American military could carry out exercises back in England. Slapton Sands was a place in South Devon and it bore great resemblance to parts of the French coastline, and this location was chosen to rehearse for the Normandy landings. On the 28th of April 1944, in daylight, assault forces of the 4th US Infantry Division had gone ashore at Slapton Sands. It's a stretch of beach along the southeast coast of England that closely resembles a beach along the Normandy French coastline, and that beach was called Utah Beach, okay, where the Americans were about to land a few weeks later. The assault on Slapton Sands was known as Exercise Tiger and was one of several rehearsals conducted in preparation of the invasion. Exercise Tiger was under the command of a man by the name of Admiral John Moon of the United States Navy, and was one of several rehearsals conducted at Slapton Sands. The exercise was conducted between the 22nd and the 30th of April in 1944, which was really about 6 weeks before the invasion itself, and commenced with the marshalling and embarking of troops on what was called LSTs, or landing ship tanks. That's a picture of one of the big boats there. Okay, so first of all, lads, they sent in the assault troops in a small landing craft, and then they landed these big boats called LST, landing ship tanks. Okay. The landing ship tank was a flat-bottom, 4,500 ton assault ship capable of carrying several hundred men, lorries, tanks, okay, and equipment. The first assault landings were made on the morning of the 27th of April, following a bombardment. Can you imagine this now, that they're moving all the people out? They're practicing actually bombing, as they're going to be doing here, and they're landing the assault troops, etc. A follow-up convoy of 8 LSTs, these big ships, with hundreds of men on them, were expected later that night. Okay, and this is the convoy that met with tragedy. The flotilla of the 8 LSTs was heading towards Slapton Sands, transporting the follow-up force of engineers, quartermaster troops, etc. They were not scheduled to be part of the assault, but they were supposed to be unloaded in an orderly fashion. Okay, trucks, amphibious trucks, jeeps, and engineering equipment. That was the very same thing that happened here. The assault troops go in, then the big LSTs come in, and they start unloading all the heavy equipment and the vehicles and all that. Okay, so they're rehearsing this over there at Slapton Sands. Okay, unfortunately for them, German E-boats, they're not U-boats, they're E-boats, okay, which are actually torpedo boats with a top speed of 40 knots, patrol the English Channel at night time. And the commander, even though the commander-in-chief of Plymouth was responsible for the safety of this rehearsal. And that commander had placed several extra patrols across the mouth of a place called Lyme Bay. And that extra security consisted of 2 destroyers, 3 MTBs, or motor torpedo boats belonging to the English, 2 motor gunboats from the Royal Navy, and another MTB patrol was sent to watch Cherbourg. Okay, because that's where the German U-boats should come out of France in the evening time. On the night of the 27th of April at 10 p.m, okay, a group of 9 torpedo boats belonging to the Germans set out on a normal reconnaissance mission from their base in Cherbourg, and they went to the area of Lyme Bay. They followed the usual channel route without any sign of a convoy or enemy ships, and as they headed towards Lyme Bay, they suddenly came in visual contact with the convoy of the 8 LST ships. Okay, and since they had no naval escorts, they quickly positioned themselves for a torpedo attack. As the convoy approached Lyme Bay, it was manoeuvring in the loop to get ready to land on the beach. It was here that the E-boats made contact and opened fire. A few minutes past 2 a.m, LST 507 was torpedoed, hitting its
auxiliary
engine and cutting all electric power. The ship burst into flames. The firefighting equipment futile because of the power failure. After 45 minutes or so, the survivors abandoned ship. LST 51 was hit by 2 torpedoes shortly after LST 507. The ship burst into flames, rolled over and sank within 6 minutes. Imagine that, on 6 minutes. Several minutes later, another ship, LST 289, is torpedoed. However, LST 289 managed to limp back to the shore, and only after suffering minor damage. There was very few deaths and casualties amongst the men on board. In the meantime, on the other LSTs, trapped below the decks, hundreds of soldiers and sailors went down with the ships. There was little time to launch the lifeboats, and some of the lifeboats were jammed. Many leapt into the sea but soon drowned. Some made down with their waterlogged coats and their equipment. Others had the life belts around their waist and were found the next morning bobbing upside down in the water. Okay. The rest of them succumbed to hypothermia. Okay. And in all, 789 American soldiers and sailors died on that night during Exercise Tiger. Allied commanders were not only concerned about the loss of life and the loss of the 2 LSTs, which left them with no LST as a reserve for the attack here on D-Day, but also about the possibility that the Germans had taken prisoners. This is the German torpedo boats picking up survivors out of the water. Okay, they had taken prisoners who might be forced to reveal secrets about the upcoming invasion. 10 of the officers on board those LSTs had been closely involved in the invasion planning, which is going to happen in 6 weeks' time, and they knew about the assigned beaches in France. Okay, and so these guys are. The general staff considered changing the operation altogether, presuming that the enemy would discover about the D-Day landings themselves. Miraculously, and good for those, general staff, every one of those 10 officers was actually found. Their bodies were recovered. Okay, they actually had drowned and their bodies were recovered. So that meant then that they weren't taken prisoner. The Germans didn't find out about the plans, so they went ahead with the invasion. Orders went out. Sorry. The survivors were strictly ordered not to talk about what had happened. Orders went out with the strictest of secrecy, and all who knew or might learn about the tragedy, including doctors and nurses who treated the survivors. There was no point in letting the enemy know what he had accomplished, and least of all affording any clue might link Slapton Sands with Utah Beach, which is down here on the coast. When the waters of the English Channel at least ceased to wash up bloated bodies ashore, the toll of the dead and missing stood at 198 sailors, 551 soldiers, a total of 749. The most costly training incident involving US forces during World War II. The subsequent official investigation revealed that 2 factors may have contributed to the tragedy: the lack of escort vessels and an error in radio frequencies. Although there was a number of British picket ships stationed off the southeast coast, including some of them facing Cherbourg, only 2 vessels were assigned to accompany the convoy. A corvette, which is an old World War I destroyer, that earlier on that day had been damaged in a collision and it had went into port, and the replacement vessel came to the scene too late. The US LSTs were on a different radio frequency than the corvette, which is the British Navy destroyer. When one of the picket ships spotted the German U-boats, okay, soon after midnight, a report quickly reached the British corvette, but it never got to the lads in the LST ships. Assuming that the American vessels had received the same report, the commander of the corvette made no reference to contact the guys in the LSTs. With the end of the war, the tragedy slapped in sands like many other wartime events involving loss of life, such as the sinking of a Belgian ship off Cherbourg in Christmas 1944, in which 800 American soldiers died, received very little attention. Nevertheless, references to the tragedy were made in at least 3 books published soon after the war. The story was also covered in 2 US classified, unclassified official histories. In 1954, 10 years after D-Day, the US authorities unveiled a monument at Slapton Sands, honouring the people of the farms and villages and towns of the region who generously left their homes and lands to provide a battle practice area for the assault on Normandy June 1944. During the course of this ceremony, the US commander NATO told of the tragedy that befell Exercise Tiger. All the while a detailed unclassified account of the tragedy rested in the National Archives. In 1968, when a former British policeman, Kenneth Small, moved to the village of Slapton, he bought and operated a small guest house. Mr. Small took long walks along the beach and began to find relics of the exercise tiger. He asked himself why there was no memorial to those who had died there. There was a monument erected by the US to the British civilians, but there was no mention of the dead Americans. And then he learned from one of the local fishermen about an object that was out there on the seabed. Okay, and he got a couple of divers, a couple of lads, they went out in a fishing boat and they actually found the Sherman tank. That Sherman tank was not lost in Exercise Tiger, but it was lost in another rehearsal the year earlier on. And at considerable expense to himself, etc., he actually salvaged the tank. He got it dragged ashore, okay, and excuse me, that tank was then placed on a plinth on the beach as a memorial to those Americans who had died during Exercise Tiger. And that ceremony took place on the 40th anniversary of D-Day. The ceremony then got wind by the press and all that there, and all these sort of accusations came out about the big massive being covered up. Families were never told what actually happened to their sons and etc. Okay, and that was getting out of hand. Kenneth Small meanwhile wanted more. He pursued, okay, a cover up, and nevertheless wanted an official commemoration of the US government of those who died. He received an invitation from an ex-army major who commanded the tank battalion of the one that was found. He went to the United States and he was introduced to a Congresswoman, Beverly Byron, who turned out to be the daughter of General Eisenhower's former naval aide. Byron arranged for a plaque to be placed honouring the American dead and American participation at the ceremony of the unveiling plaque in Slapton Sands. When this thing had all leaked there about the ceremony and that, when Small was unveiling the tank as a monument law, there was one of the local women, Dorothy Seekins, who maintained that as a young girl she had witnessed the burial of hundreds of Americans in a mass grave. Subsequently she changed the story, she was highlighting the press, so that all changed anyway. The exercise continued at Slapton Beach with disastrous results. The practices of assaults included live firing exercises. Many more soldiers were tragically killed by friendly fire from the support and naval bombardment. Okay, they said that thanks to the training at Slapton Sands, fewer soldiers actually died landing at Utah Beach.